good afternoon. It's a pleasure to have this chance to interact with all of you. Uh, this is going to be about a book I'm publishing called What Christians Can Learn from Other Religions. Now, the point of that book, it's not just about what can we understand about other religions, but what can we learn from other religions. There's a little bit of a difference there. And first, we have to acknowledge that there is great complexity in all religions. There are different schools of thought, different denominations, different approaches. I'm not, in my book, going to attempt to give a complete understanding of all the religions. For one thing, it would be beyond my competence. I'm not that much of a scholar in all of the different religions. But I have sought to mine out of different religious traditions the things that I, as a Christian, and other Christians might learn from. And there's one other very important preliminary point, and that is we don't compare the best of our faith with the worst of somebody else's. Let me use an illustration of that. In the interaction between Christians and Muslims, Christians are often very much offended by the term jihad, thinking that means terrorism. Meanwhile, Muslims are offended by the word crusade, thinking that means a throwback to the violent attack upon centers of Islam. Well, jihad, in the best Muslim tradition, is about the spiritual quest, which includes the quest to make this a better world. And crusade, as Christians would know, is a generic term that refers to any cause that we're invested in that is very important. So with those clarifications, let me say that in this interaction today, I look forward to getting insight from various people about how I can improve this book. It won't be published for about another year. I've finished most of a first draft of the book, and I'm not going to read what I've written in the few minutes we have here. But I'm hoping that there'll be some new insights and you'll have some advice to give me about the book. And if you do, I'll be happy to credit you for doing that. Well, first of all, about Judaism. Of course, the relationship between Christians and Jews is particularly close. And there are various things that Christians already take from Judaism. One term that I'm going to emphasize here is the idea of chosenness. Being chosen. That doesn't mean to Christians that we are chosen by God in quite the same way that the Jewish faith might hold. Nevertheless, there is a point, particularly in the book of Amos, in the Hebrew tradition, that being chosen is not a privilege, but a responsibility. We are chosen by God for a particular responsibility, not as a particular privilege, and one can work that in various ways in relationship to the idea of a calling. Now, concerning Islam, we are involved now in unusually difficult relationships involving much of the Muslim world, forgetting sometimes that a vast majority of the more than 1 billion Muslims are quite peaceful and oriented, very positive in their relationships with others, emphasizing many of the same things that other religions do about the importance of love and so on. But there is something in Islam and Judaism that maybe I can emphasize in my book. Both Muslims and Jews, when they think of the Christian doctrine of the Trinity, think we mean 3 different gods. Well, that isn't really what the Christian doctrine of Trinity is, but when Muslims and Jews emphasize the importance of monotheism, belief in one God, they may push us Christians to be a little bit more forthright, to come clean about Christianity is also a monotheistic faith. As one of the great creeds puts it, I believe in the one God, maker and ruler of all things, and so on. But then the Trinity, to clarify the meaning of Trinity, for me the most satisfactory way is to speak of God in 3 persons, taking the ancient root of the word person, which is the persona, the mask worn by an actor in a drama depicting sadness or joy or whatever, the mask is the persona, but if you think of God in three persons, three different ways in which we experience God. One might say the faces of God toward us. And there's an element of that in Hinduism as well, where there is also belief in one God, Brahman, who is pervasive of all, but has various manifestations. And the different manifestations of God, the avatars, these are sometimes referred to as gods and goddesses, but that doesn't mean separate beings. These are expressions of God. Now, of course, in Hinduism, there may be Hindus who think of these as separate gods, but that idea of God being expressed in different ways, and that's something that is rather fundamental to Christianity too, but these different faiths maybe push us to be very clear about what we believe about the Trinity and how God is expressed in human life. Now, with Hinduism and Buddhism, there's great emphasis upon the illusion factor in life, that much of what we take to be permanent is illusion. In the Buddhist sense, virtually everything we directly experience is an illusion. In Hinduism, everything is an illusion unless it is understood in relationship to Brahman or to God. And one thinks of so many things that Christians and other people in modern culture consider to be very permanent, but in fact are more illusion. The illusions of materialism and the different kinds of things that the God of success, the God of money, the God of prestige, these are ultimately illusions. In the long run of all eternity, these are illusions, and we need to clarify that. And the idea that God is much more than we can know. God, particularly I believe in the Hindu sense, you get this also in Islam, the deep expressions of Islam. God is much, much bigger than we are, much bigger than anything we can conceive of. We believe that we encounter God, that we experience God, particularly as we experience God as God of love. But God is so much bigger, so much vaster than anything we can know. The Chinese religion, I have a chapter on that, dealing with Taoism. One point that sticks out in Taoism, emphasis that morality is what counts and not ceremony. And so often we get a lot of good out of ceremony, I'm sure, but not to think of ceremony as what is ultimate. These are forms, and what really matters is morality or spirit. And with Confucianism, often speaking about politeness and being a gentleman, as Confucius puts it, well, that's an expression of love, that is respect for other people, even when we disagree with them. And how much we all need that message today in a time when politics is often so abrasive and so polarized. To have great respect for others is to show love for others. I have a chapter on the somewhat smaller religions. I've given the title to that chapter is Not to be Overlooked. And that includes primal religion, as expressed by the Aborigines in Australia, for example, and some Native American faith and in Africa. The emphasis here upon spirituality as it pervades nature, and there's much to be worked on that. The final chapter of the book is on atheism, and this is going to be controversial. I don't think very many atheists like to think of atheism as a religion, but if you define religion as what you consider to be ultimate, then atheism qualifies as yet another form of religion. And here one learns from a lot of expressions of atheism that one must be very, very honest about the dark side of Christian tradition, and there is a dark side of things like the Inquisition and so on, but also a clear acceptance of science, understanding that science is a disciplined effort to understand the factual world. Well, that's the book in a nutshell. It's a very small nutshell, and I look forward to your comments, your questions, and maybe you can help me to make this a better book.